About 6 years ago, I was asked to come and do a mass and exposition of the Blessed Sacrament at one of the camps up on Senator Highway for a group that was here for a marriage renewal retreat weekend that had come up from Phoenix. So I drove out and got there, and they explained to me, the team explained to me what they were doing and what they wanted me to kind of help them with. They wanted the men and women who were there on that weekend to understand the idea of the real presence of Christ. The real presence of Christ starts in the Eucharist, but then it flows out of the Eucharist into the other sacraments. And especially on that weekend, they wanted the couples, to spend time, at least 1 hour each, in front of the sacrament, and as they looked at it, to realize that just as they saw the presence of Christ in the Eucharist, there in the monstrance, they needed to see the presence of Christ in their marriage. That is, in each other. That in the same way Christ was present in the Eucharist, he was also present in their sacrament. That he was with them. And the text they wanted me to use, especially that night, was that text from Isaiah 49 that is our first reading. When Zion says, "You've abandoned me, you've forgotten me." And God responds to his people and tells them, can a woman, can a mother forget her baby? Can a woman be without tenderness for the child within her womb? But even if these should forget, I will never forget you, my people. And then they added on the verse that's left off tonight, which I think is unfortunate, where God says, "See, I have carved you in the palm of my hand." Now, when they were telling me this, I had to smile because it brought to mind a few weeks before I'd gone to one of the senior homes here in town to celebrate a mass, to celebrate a 75th wedding anniversary. There was this couple who had gotten married right out of high school. They were 18 years old. And now they were 93. They had been married for 75 years, 3/4 of a century. Can you imagine that? And, we celebrated the Eucharist. I had them renew their wedding vows. And just at the end, I held the old gentleman that was the husband. He asked if he could say something, and I held the microphone so he could speak. And he was holding his wife's hands. And, of course, everybody in the home was there. And he said, 75 years ago, God gave me a precious gift beyond all price. He looked at his wife, and the tears started running down his cheeks, and he said, "He gave me you." See, that couple understood the real presence of Christ. They understood the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, and they understood that through their sacrament of marriage, the real presence of Christ was also in their spouse, with each other. They had gotten married in 1930. They had to live through the Great Depression. They had to live through the Second World War. They lost a little daughter to scarlet fever. And one of their sons died in Korea. And all of the things they had had to deal with in their life, they knew that Jesus was with them. He had not forgotten them. He had not abandoned them. And when tough times happened, that horrible moment when they realized their little girl was gone. That heart-sinking moment when they opened the telegram from the Army Department that told them their son was lost. They knew Jesus was with them. And it drew them closer together in their sacrament because they knew they were not forgotten. That's what God is talking about in Isaiah today. And it's also what Christ is talking about when he tells us not to worry. had a person tell me the other day they thought this was the stupidest text in the Bible. They had this idea that Jesus was saying, well, just kind of, just hang back, have a little wine, eat a little cheese, enjoy some rays, and don't worry about anything. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is not saying not to plan. He's not saying don't be prepared for the future. What he is saying is don't worry about it. There's a big difference between planning and worrying, isn't there? Worry is when we have put our faith in somebody other than God. We put our faith in mammon. Now, the general description of mammon is money or wealth. But actually, the word mammon means that which is not there. So we put our faith in something that really isn't there. That when we need it, is going to let us down. And that's where worry comes in. Because if we really put our faith in God, what have we got to be worried about? He's with us. Now, I'm a past grand master of worry. I can't tell you the number of nights, I haven't gotten any sleep because I was worried about something. And most of the things that I worry about are things that could happen, might happen, but generally don't happen. And I think that's the way it is with a lot of us. I hear a lot of people come and talk to me about one trouble or another. When it really comes down to it, they're worrying about something, I had a lady here a while back was worried about having heart trouble. And she was really concerned about it. And she was really worried about it. And she should have been, because all of her worrying was giving her heart trouble. See, that's the trouble with worry. Worry is counterproductive. You start worrying about it, and before you know it, you got it. The only thing I ever got out of worrying was a hole in my stomach. And then I remembered something. Jesus telling us, I am with you always, until the end of the age. And I realized if I'm worried about something, it's because I've put my faith in mammon, something that isn't there, instead of putting my faith in Christ, who will always be there. It's like the lesson that he teaches us in one of my favorite gospel texts. It's the one about Jesus calming the sea. I've shared this story with you before, and I think it's a good one to think about again, that when we're worried about something, we really need to remember this text. There they are, the disciples and Jesus in a boat out on the Sea of Galilee. There's this terrible storm going on. The boat's being bounced all over the place. The water is smashing over it. There's probably lightning and thunder, the wind howling and all of this. And there's Jesus fast asleep at the back of the boat. That man could sleep through anything. Maybe that's because he knew his Father was with him and he didn't have nothing to be scared of. Well, finally they come and they start shaking him because they're scared. They're worried. They grab hold of him and they say, don't you care? We're going to die. Don't you care? And he gets up. You almost see him maybe grab the little mast of the boat, looking around at them, and then he holds up his hand and he cries out, peace! Be still! And instantly the sea becomes as flat as glass. The wind is gone. The moon is shining, and it's a beautiful night for sailing on the lake. And then he turns to them and he says, why were you afraid? Have you so little faith? In other words, what are you worrying about? Don't you know I'm with you, and when I am with you, nothing can happen to you? And that's what we need to remember. Plan for the future, but don't worry about it. When you find yourself concerned about something, ask yourself, is it because I've moved something in my life above God, and that's why I'm worried? And maybe it's time for me to redirect my priorities, to recognize, hey, he is with me. He has not forgotten me. He will never abandon me. So tonight, let's all make our motto the motto of Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine. What? Me worry? Because we should not be worried. We shouldn't be afraid. We should know that Christ is with us. Remember, the only thing that happens when you worry is you wind up defeating yourself. And again, this is the champion warrior telling you this. You know, I'm born an American. I'm supposed to be a person who lives in the land of the free. But I've spent a good part of my life a slave to my worries and my fears. Then I met Christ. He came one day and he kicked open that prison door and he says, "You come on out." I got a kick here a while back. I got a note from my old novice master. And he said, "I remember the three of you." There were three of us in my novitiate. He said, "I know that Jorge, if the three of you found yourself in a bathtub with an alligator, that Jorge would just wait piously to be eaten. Alberto would have fought the guy off, and you would have figured out some way to get along with him." That's what happens when you don't worry. You can get along with the alligators in your life. So tonight, let's listen once more to these words, and let's make them a reality in our life. The next time you feel alone, forgotten, or abandoned, just listen with your heart for him to tell you, can a mother forget her baby? Can a woman be without tenderness for the child within her womb? But even if these forget, I will never forget you, for I have carved you in the palm of my hand. And now, without fear or worry, let us stand and profess what we believe. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty.
And I will raise you up, and I will